Eric Longenhagen joins us right now. Eric, it's Brian Kenny. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Baseball soul. Wow. Here we go. Going from the scouts into the data and the revolution and all that. Explain for the viewers out there, though, what the tech revolution in baseball has been over the last few years, just the last couple of years with players.
Right. Yeah. The integration of technology into player development and player evaluation has been the thing that scouts 20 years ago were worried that analytics, broadly defined, would be. So Rapsodo, TrackMan, anything optical or radar tracking or a combination thereof, that is occupying a bigger part of the player evaluation pie. That has really encroached on the duties of scouts over the last just 5 or 10 years, and is moving down from the big league level down to the minor leagues, and now is pretty prolific at the high school level. So there aren't, the spaces in which scouts operate alone are starting to shrink.
Okay, so this is the interesting part now. What did they get wrong, or what, as it turns out, were they getting right? Meaning traditional scouting beliefs. Did it overturn them? Did it confirm others?
Yeah, it's been a mix, right? Certainly understanding fastball movement with more precision and granularity is a result of having the tech. Understanding fastball carry and rise and the way pitch mixes work together has been a result of tech. And then there are all sorts of old scouting maxims about, like rising fastballs, right? When we started to integrate physics into the way we talk about baseball, the idea that a fastball could rise, was defined as a physical impossibility, which is true, but it does trick the hitter's eye that way. And so we can measure that now with the tech, while it's been something that, historically has been apocryphal, based on scouting looks. It turns out that that's actually true and impactful. There are all sorts of things like that that are old wives' tales that have turned out to be true in scouting.
Give us another one then. Like, what's another thing that, because as you know, throughout the whole sabermetric revolution, things were debunked, and then it came back and say, wait a second, some of that actually is true. Did you find things like that?
Well, yeah, I think even abstract things that you can't confirm with data, people's perception is just plays such a huge role in their behavior in big moments. I mean, we've seen it for the last 4 months, sort of humanity's inability to execute when the stakes are high, even if there are things that we know we should be doing. And so, like, even the closer's mentality, I think, people are scared to fly on planes, even though statistically it's safer than driving. And I think that ninth inning just looms large for some people. I think there are things like that player makeup is vaguely defined, and the scouting industry does not do a good job of being consistent across the board about how they define and talk about makeup. Two people could be talking about it and really be discussing two totally different things, or using nomenclature that is supposed to be cohesive so that you can talk across organizational lines. And that's what the 20/80 scale is for. And so some of those things scouting still needs to work on, but I do think that it's meaningful and still has value.
It's funny you bring that up, because even now I've gotten to where if we know what good process is, and players who have good process, isn't that good habits? And so can we be much better at looking at a player's habits, meaning his makeup, his drive, the will to win, all of that stuff, by looking at things that you can now measure?
Sure, I think it depends on the level of organization of each individual organization. But yes, I think that there are things on the back end that are indicators, measurable indicators of what you define as makeup, which seems to be, you mentioned work habits and work ethic, but the way you define it and the way other people in the game define it might be different, and you might not even know that. And that is sort of a problem.
Interesting. And now you ask in the book if scouts should have access to data. What are we talking about there?
Mostly the stuff I described before: pitch metrics, TrackMan data, pitch data. There's a debate as to whether or not it's going to bias their opinions about players, or if it's weaponizing them to do their jobs more competently. And I think that incorporating it, it assumes that the scout is open-minded, which of course we know is not consistently true. But incorporating it into what I've done, and I think what my colleagues in the public prospect sphere have done, has been tremendously useful. I think my work personally is much better now than it was even just 3-4 years ago, by better understanding and integrating the tech into the way I go about it. But I also have this, perspective and idea that there are immeasurable things and context provided by intel that scouts provide that inform my opinions on players as well, stuff that isn't measured at all.
Now, let's talk about this year then. Scouts initially will not be traveling to games. What's the impact there? How are teams going to do that job?
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult. We saw teams in the draft who didn't have looks at players for several months be scared away by that. There were certainly teams who operated conservatively in the draft. And now we're going to have a situation similar to that on the pro side of scouting, where scouts don't have access to even the offsite camps at which most of the prospects are going to be playing. And I talked with folks in front offices this morning. Any of the data generated at those campsites, TrackMan data, Rapsodo, and the like, pitch velocities, spin rates, exit velocities, that type of stuff, it's not going to be shared across all 30 organizations. So there's just a huge blind spot in scouting right now. I think it's going to impact what we see at the trade deadline. I think we're going to see a lot of players to be named later traded at the deadline. It seems like a loophole that teams can use to circumnavigate these 60-player pool limitations that we have this summer. So I think we're going to see that. There might be some teams who operate conservatively, sellers who would like if you're Cleveland and want to trade Francisco Lindor for 4 or 5 prospects, you haven't seen most of those prospects now in 6-7 months. By the time the deadline rolls around, it might behoove you to wait until the winter when hopefully, theoretically, there has been some sort of developmental league or leagues in Florida and Arizona before you make a deal like that.
Right. Interesting. One last thing, visual machine learning. Where are we on that? What's happening?
Right. Yeah. This is one of the things that scouts fear is encroaching on them, right? Like it's this ability for machine learning to parse images very quickly. Some of the high-speed video that teams are taking that we take here at Fangraphs, I got a camera here that travels in my carry-on, shoots at about 1,000 frames per second. The footage from that can be put into a program that is just based on the video, calculating spin rate and stuff scores, basically. Pitching especially is becoming something that is automated. It is, humans and automation versus the work we do is a thing that our society has sort of tussled with at an accelerated rate for decades and decades now. And yeah, I think visual machine learning is the next thing that might continue to grow and occupy the space that scouts eyeball.
Eric, just quickly, because it's a fascinating topic, but we're talking about like if you were going to face Jacob deGrom the next day, actually let me get a machine Jacob deGrom to pitch to me and let me see the repertoire. That can be done now? Is that being done?
No. I'm talking about scouts taking a high-speed camera to a field and shooting footage of young players with it, draft-eligible players, and learning much, much more in a short period of time. And then at scale, when you have, theoretically dozens of scouts with these high-speed cameras, learning about players via the technology, not themselves. I'm talking about amateur and pro scouting prospects rather than big leaguers.
Okay, but that's assessing tools. Is that going to accelerate that process where if you can pop the glove and hit deep, it doesn't matter what your other skills are, but kind of more, I guess, increase the reliance on that or the incentivization of that?
I'm talking about objective tool grades, starting with pitchers, which seems like has been the thing that scouting and player dev has leapt out in front of. Understanding pitching has just been ahead of hitting this whole time as far as tech is concerned, because it's a thing that the pitchers are in control on their own. Like hitters still have to react. There's something going on neurologically in that split second of time that we can't parse or measure just yet. But pitchers are very much in control of what they're doing. And so all of it has been easier to measure and understand. And now it's happening with like AI and video working together.
All right. Well, there's a lot to go through here. Eric, pleasure speaking with you. Best of luck with the book, and we'll do it again. Love to dig in a little more. Thank you so much.
Thank you.